Do you know that we have a Patreon exclusive podcast? That's right. In addition to our weekly podcast that you can find on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, we have a Patreon exclusive podcast. Think of it like an intro to the Bible class, but without the quizzes, assignments, or homework. Every week you can come and join us for conversations about smaller sections of biblical texts, starting in Genesis and making our way through every week. We're going to look at what's going on in the Hebrew and the Greek, what other ancient traditions have to say, what kind of difficulties exist in the text, how do readers fix plot holes, or maybe look over some things sometimes. What's going on with connections between other ancient literature and the Bible? What does archaeology have to say? All of this and more happening every week in this Patreon exclusive podcast available to expert members and above. If this is something you think you're interested in, consider coming and joining us on Patreon at patreon.com/BibleAndArc. Here's a little sample. The Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering, he had no regard. So why is there a difference in this? On the face, the simplest reading you can have is no answer given. God just decided.
Yeah, and they have different roles. I mean, Cain tills the land, and Abel herds the sheep or tends the flocks.
And this opens up what is one of the most probably frequently offered readings, which is the nomadic pastoralist ideal versus the settled agrarian.
Yeah.
And so Cain is that settled agriculturalist, farming the ground, and Abel is the pastoral out with the herds. And that's still today one of those idealized things through history, right? You look to art, you look to literature, being in the woods, being in the fields, it's an ideal place to be.
Yeah.
And so some see in this, maybe within the history of a text, one of these versions is the ideal version of who we should be or what our history is, and one of them is not so good.